You are on HOA neighbor court. I stayed calm and let her tell on herself. I am counting down, Karen yelled across the mailbox cluster, her voice bouncing off the concrete walls of the first floor corridor. She had a printed spreadsheet in one hand and her phone on a gimbal in the other, filming from maybe 6 inches away from my face. I am counting down the missing items, and I am starting with you. The package locker door behind me was hanging open. The metal frame bent slightly, and inside was a torn priority mail envelope with my apartment number printed on the label. This was Sunset Ridge Community Association in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I had been living for 8 months, working as a sales rep who drives all day, and I had a home-based business license that the HOA was now trying to get it revoked because Stephanie Kessler, the social committee chair, had decided I was a thief. The locker door had been left ajar when I arrived 10 minutes earlier. I had come down to check my mail after a long day on the road, and the moment I touched the handle to close it, Stephanie appeared from around the corner like she had been waiting. "That is evidence of forced entry," she shouted, "and you are on video." I stepped back and pulled out my phone to record her. "I did not force anything," I said. "I just got here." She moved closer, the gimbal phone shaking slightly in her grip. "I have witnesses," she said, her voice rising. "I have witnesses who saw you here yesterday, and a clerk confirmed your pattern." "The clerk at which store?" I asked. She ignored me and tapped the cheap plastic badge clipped to her coat. "I am authorized to investigate theft complaints, and you are now under investigation." She pulled a portable printer from her coat pocket, the kind that prints sticky labels, and started typing on it without breaking eye contact. The printer whirred and spat out a small slip of paper. She peeled it off and slammed it onto the locker frame next to my head. "That is your official notice," she said. "You have 48 hours to provide proof of ownership for every package you received in the last 30 days, or the HOA will bill you for the theft investigation." I stared at the label. It had no official letterhead, just block text that said "Violation Notice" in bold letters, and a case number she had clearly made up. "How much is the investigation fee?" I asked. She smiled. $200 plus 50 per day until resolution. "And if I provide proof?" I said. She shrugged. "Then we will see if it is legitimate." I recorded the entire exchange and then walked back to my apartment on the 3rd floor. My hands were shaking. I had dealt with HOA nonsense before. Small stuff like parking warnings and noise complaints that went nowhere, but this was different. Stephanie had been escalating for months. It started when I applied for a home-based business license through the city, which required HOA approval. Sunset Ridge had a strict rental cap and a lot of long-term owners who resented anyone new, especially renters, and Stephanie had made it her mission to find a violation that would let the board revoke my lease. The theft accusation was her nuclear option. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up my email and search for every delivery confirmation from the last month. I had about 15 packages during that time, all work-related supplies, and everyone had a delivery photo attached. I downloaded them all and started organizing them into a folder. Then I checked my building security portal. Sunset Ridge had a camera system that covered the mailbox cluster, the lobby, and the parking lot, but residents could only request footage through a formal process that required board approval. I submitted the request form online, noting the date, time, and locker number. The system said it would take up to 5 business days. I did not have 5 days. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from the HOA management office. I called back and got Linda, the receptionist who handled most of the day-to-day chaos. She sounded exhausted. "I have a note here that you need to come in before noon," she said. "Stephanie filed a formal complaint last night, and the manager wants to review it with you in person." "What kind of complaint?" I asked. Linda paused. "Theft, vandalism, and intimidation." I laughed out loud. "Intimidation? Who did I intimidate?" Linda lowered her voice. "She claims you threatened her while she was performing her duties." "That is completely false," I said. "I have video of the whole thing." Linda sighed. Bring it. The office has a walk-in cutoff at noon, and if you miss it, the complaint goes to the board as uncontested. I grabbed my laptop, my phone, and a folder with printed copies of all my delivery confirmations. I drove to the management office, which was in a strip mall about 2 miles from the complex. The office was small, just a front desk and 2 private rooms in the back. Linda was at the desk when I walked in. She gave me a tired smile and gestured toward the back. He is waiting for you. I followed her into a cramped room with a folding table and 2 chairs. The property manager, a man named Greg, was sitting with a 3-ring binder open in front of him. He did not look up when I entered. Sit, he said. Greg flipped through the binder without making eye contact. Stephanie Kessler submitted a complaint alleging that you forced open a package locker, stole multiple items, and verbally threatened her when she confronted you. She has photos of the damaged locker and written statements from 2 residents. I set my laptop on the table and opened the video. I did not force anything, I said. I arrived, the locker was already open, and I recorded her accusing me. Greg finally looked up. Let me see. I turned the laptop toward him and played the video. He watched in silence, his face unreadable. When it ended, he closed the binder. This does not prove you did not damage the locker earlier. I opened my delivery confirmation folder. Every package I received in the last 30 days was photographed by the carrier on delivery, I said. Here are the timestamps, the photos, and the tracking numbers. None of them show a damaged locker. Greg took the folder and flipped through it slowly. Stephanie claims the damage happened 2 days ago, he said. Do you have an alibi for that time frame? I pulled up my work calendar on my phone. I was in St. Cloud for a client meeting from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and I have gas receipts and text messages with the client to prove it. Greg made a note on a yellow pad. What about the witnesses? I shook my head. I do not know who they are, but I am betting Stephanie pressured them. Greg looked at me for a long moment. I will review this, he said. But you need to understand. The board takes theft allegations seriously. If Stephanie escalates this, you could lose your lease. That is the goal, I said. She has been trying to revoke my home business license since I moved in. Greg closed the binder again. I will call her in and get her side. Come back tomorrow at 10. I left the office feeling like I had bought myself a day, but nothing more. Stephanie was not going to back down, and Greg seemed more interested in avoiding conflict than finding the truth. I needed something bigger, something that would force the issue into the open and make it impossible for the HOA to sweep under the rug. I spent the rest of the day driving my sales route, but my mind kept circling back to the locker in the timeline. If Stephanie was framing me, she had to have been near the locker around the same time to plant the story. That meant there was a chance she was on camera. When I got home that evening, I found a printed notice taped to my door. It was on Sunset Ridge letterhead, and it said I was being billed $250 for the investigation, payable within 7 days, plus a $50 daily penalty starting immediately. At the bottom, in small print, it said failure to pay would result in suspension of guest parking and visitor access. I pulled the notice down and took a photo of it. Then I called Linda at the management office. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Linda, it is me again, I said. I just got a billing notice for the investigation. She sighed. Stephanie dropped it off this afternoon. She said, you refused to cooperate. That is a lie, I said. I gave Greg everything he asked for. Linda was quiet for a moment. Look, I am not supposed to tell you this, but Stephanie has been doing this to other residents too. Filing complaints, demanding fees, and then dropping them once people pay. Greg knows, but the board is split and no one wants to confront her. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Linda exhaled. Because I am tired of the chaos. If you can prove she is lying, I will back you up. That night, I started digging. I pulled up the Sunset Ridge resident portal and checked the security camera request log. My request was still listed as pending, but I noticed something strange. There were 3 other requests submitted in the last week, all for the same date and time as the locker incident, and all 3 had been marked denied by board decision. The denial reason was listed as insufficient cause. I took a screenshot and saved it. Then I checked the HOA bylaws, which were posted on the portal as a PDF. According to the bylaws, any resident had the right to request security footage if they were named in a formal complaint. I had been named. That meant the denial was a violation of the bylaws. The next morning, I went back to the management office at 10. Greg was waiting in the same room, but this time Stephanie was there too. She was sitting in the other chair, her arms crossed, her phone on a gimbal resting on the table in front of her, already recording. I sat down and set my laptop on the table. Greg opened the binder again. "I have reviewed both sides," he said. "Stephanie maintains that you damaged the locker and stole items. You maintain that you arrived after the damage occurred. Without additional evidence, this becomes a he said, she said situation." I opened my laptop. "I have additional evidence," I said. Greg looked up. "Go ahead." I pulled up the security camera request log screenshot and turned the laptop toward Greg. "According to the bylaws, I have the right to request footage because I am named in a formal complaint," I said. "But the board denied my request and also denied 3 other requests for the same time frame. That is a violation of the bylaws, and it suggests the board is protecting someone." Greg leaned forward and studied the screenshot. Stephanie shifted in her chair. "That is not relevant," she said. "The footage would not show anything useful." "How do you know?" I asked, turning to face her. "Have you seen it?" She hesitated. "I do not need to see it," she said. "I have witnesses." I turned back to Greg. "I want the footage released," I said. "If the board refuses, I will file a formal complaint with the city." Greg closed the binder and stood up. "I will bring this to the board," he said. "But I need to tell you, Stephanie has also filed a secondary complaint. She claims you owe the HOA for unauthorized use of the clubhouse storage closet." I stared at him. "I have never used the storage closet," I said. Stephanie pulled a printed form from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. "This is the sign-in log," she said. "Your name is on it 3 times last month." I picked up the form and scanned it. The handwriting was not mine. "This is not my signature," I said. Stephanie smiled. "Everyone agrees with me. I have messages," she said. Greg looked between us. "I will need to verify the signatures," he said. "Come back Monday." I left the office with the form in my hand and a sick feeling in my stomach. Stephanie was not just framing me for the locker, she was stacking charges to make it impossible for me to fight back. I needed to move faster. I spent the weekend reviewing every piece of evidence I had, and I realized something. Stephanie had made a mistake. The form she showed me had a creation date printed at the bottom in tiny gray text. It said the form was generated 2 days after the first entry was supposedly written. That meant the form was fake, created after the fact to support her story. Monday morning, I went back to the management office with the form and a printed copy of the metadata. Linda was at the desk again. "Is Greg in?" I asked. She shook her head. "He is out sick. The assistant manager is covering, but she is only handling emergencies." I hesitated. "This is an emergency," I said. Linda looked at me for a long moment, then picked up the phone. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. If you are enjoying this insane HOA drama, hit that like button and subscribe for more wild neighborhood stories. The assistant manager was a woman named Paula, and she had the same exhausted look as Linda. She listened while I explained the metadata issue and showed her the form. "This is a serious allegation," she said. "If you are right, this could mean Stephanie falsified documents. I need to report this to the board." "How long will that take?" I asked. Paula frowned. "The next board meeting is in 2 weeks. I do not have 2 weeks, I said. She has already billed me $250, and she is threatening to suspend my access. Paula sighed. I can freeze the billing until this is resolved, she said. But I cannot do anything about the access suspension without board approval. I left the office and drove home. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a tow truck parked near the mailbox cluster. The driver was standing next to my car with a clipboard, and Stephanie was next to him, pointing at my vehicle. I parked in a guest spot and walked over. What is going on? I asked. The driver looked at me. This your car? Yeah, I said. Stephanie stepped forward. You are in violation of guest parking restrictions, she said. This vehicle is being towed. I looked at the driver. I live here, I said. This is my assigned spot. The driver checked his clipboard. I have an order from the HOA to tow any vehicle in violation of guest parking rules. Stephanie smiled. You lost your access privileges when you failed to pay the investigation fee, she said. I pulled out my phone and opened my payment history on the resident portal. The investigation fee is frozen, I said, turning the screen toward the driver. I was told this morning by the assistant manager. The driver looked at Stephanie. She frowned. That is not in the system, she said. The driver shrugged. I need confirmation from the office before I can release the vehicle. I called Linda. She picked up on the second ring, and I explained the situation. She put me on hold, then came back a minute later. The freeze is in the system, she said. Let me talk to the driver. I handed my phone to the driver. He listened for a moment, then nodded and hung up. You are clear, he said, handing the phone back. Stephanie stepped closer, her face red. This is not over, she said. You are going to pay every dollar you owe, plus penalties. I looked at her calmly. I will pay what I legally owe, I said. But I am not paying for fake charges. She jabbed a finger toward my chest. I have witnesses, she said again. Her catchphrase was starting to sound hollow. The driver climbed back into his truck and drove off. Stephanie stood in the parking lot for another minute, glaring at me, then turned and walked toward the clubhouse. I watched her go, then pulled out my phone and called Linda again. I need a favor, I said. What kind of favor? She asked. I need you to pull the sign-in logs for the clubhouse storage closet for the last 3 months. Linda was quiet. Why? Because I think Stephanie has been using the storage closet to stash stolen items, I said. And I think she has been falsifying the logs to cover it up. Linda exhaled slowly. If I do this, I am putting my job on the line, she said. I know, I said. But if I am right, this is bigger than just me. She was quiet for a long moment. Come by tomorrow morning, she said. Early. I will have the logs. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the confrontation with Stephanie in the parking lot. The way she had smiled when she thought the tow truck would take my car. The way she had repeated her catchphrase like it was a shield. I realized she had been using the same playbook for months, maybe years. File a complaint, demand payment, escalate with threats, and then move on to the next target once the victim gave up. The problem was, I was not giving up. The next morning, I went to the management office at 7 a.m. Linda was waiting at the front desk with a manila folder. She handed it to me without a word. Inside were 3 months of sign-in logs for the clubhouse storage closet. I flipped through them quickly. There were about 20 entries total, and 5 of them were supposedly signed by me. The handwriting was similar, but not identical. More importantly, all 5 entries had the same metadata creation date, 2 weeks ago. I looked up at Linda. These are all fake, I said. She nodded. And that is not all, she said. I pulled the key logs too. The storage closet has an electronic lock that tracks every entry. Your keycard has never been used to open that door. I stared at the folder. This is it, I said. This proves she falsified the documents. Linda leaned forward. There is more, she said. I checked the logs for Stephanie's keycard. She has been entering the storage closet 2 or 3 times a week for the last 6 months. Always late at night, always alone. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What is in there?" I asked. Linda shook her head. "I do not have access to the closet. Only board members do. But if you want to find out, you will need to get the board to open it." I left the office with the folder and drove straight to the police station. I asked to speak to a deputy and explained the situation. The deputy, a woman named Officer Ramirez, listened carefully and took notes. "Do you have any proof that items are being stored in the closet?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "But I have proof that the sign-in logs were falsified, and I have electronic records showing the person who accused me has been accessing the closet multiple times a week." Officer Ramirez made another note. "I can file a report," she said. "But without evidence of an actual crime, I cannot get a warrant. However, if you can get the HOA to open the closet voluntarily, I can be there to document what you find." I called Paula, the assistant manager, and explained what I had found. She was silent for a long moment. "If we open that closet and find stolen items, this becomes a criminal matter," she said. "I know," I said. "But if we do not open it, Stephanie is going to keep doing this to other residents." Paula sighed. "I will call an emergency board meeting for tonight," she said. "Be there at 7. The emergency board meeting was held in the clubhouse, a small building near the mailbox cluster. When I arrived, there were about 15 people in the room, including Paula, Greg, who had apparently recovered from his illness, 3 board members, and Stephanie. She was sitting in the front row with her phone on a gimbal resting on her lap, already recording. I took a seat near the back and set my folder on the chair next to me. Paula called the meeting to order and explained the situation. "We have received allegations that the clubhouse storage closet sign-in logs have been falsified," she said. "We also have electronic lock records that contradict the written logs. The board needs to decide whether to open the storage closet and investigate." One of the board members, an older man named Harold, raised his hand. "Who made these allegations?" he asked. Paula gestured toward me. I stood up and walked to the front of the room. I presented the folder with the sign-in logs, the metadata printouts, and the keycard access records. I explained the timeline and the pattern of Stephanie's accusations. When I finished, Harold looked at Stephanie. "What do you have to say?" he asked. Stephanie stood up slowly, her face calm. "This is a coordinated attack," she said. "He is trying to discredit me because I caught him stealing." She held up a portable thumb drive held between 2 fingers. "I have video evidence on this drive that proves he was at the mailbox cluster at the time of the theft." Harold took the drive and handed it to Paula. "Can we view this now?" he asked. Paula nodded and plugged the drive into a laptop connected to a projector. The room went dark, and the video started playing. It showed the mailbox cluster from a high angle, date-stamped 2 days before the locker incident. I watched as a figure in a black jacket approached the lockers, looked around, and then forced open one of the doors. The figure grabbed a package and walked away. The video was grainy, and the face was not visible, but the jacket looked similar to mine. I waited until the video finished, then raised my hand. "Can I respond?" I asked. Harold nodded. I walked to the front of the room and pointed at the projector screen. "That video is not me," I said. "First, the date stamp is 2 days before the locker incident Stephanie reported. Second, I have gas receipts and client meeting records that prove I was in St. Cloud that entire day. Third, the camera angle is from the ceiling, but the mailbox cluster does not have a ceiling-mounted camera." I turned to Paula. "Can you confirm the camera locations?" Paula checked her notes and nodded. "The mailbox cluster only has a wall-mounted camera," she said. "There is no ceiling camera in that area." The room erupted in murmurs. Stephanie stood up, her face red. "That is a lie," she shouted. "I got that footage from the security company." I pulled out my phone and opened the resident portal. "The security company only provides footage from cameras on our property," I said. If that video came from a ceiling-mounted camera, it came from somewhere else. Or it was fabricated. Harold held up his hand for silence. Stephanie, where did you get this video? He asked. She hesitated. From a neighbor, she said. They have a doorbell camera that covers the mailbox area. Which neighbor? Harold asked. Stephanie did not answer. Harold turned to Paula. I want the storage closet opened, he said. Tonight. Paula nodded and stood up. The board members, Paula, Greg, Officer Ramirez, Stephanie, and I all walked across the parking lot to the clubhouse storage closet. Paula unlocked the door with a master key and stepped inside. She flipped on the light, and we all crowded into the doorway. The closet was about 10 feet by 10 feet, lined with metal shelves. The shelves were packed with boxes, shopping bags, and plastic bins. Paula opened the first box. Inside were packages, dozens of them, all unopened, all with address labels for different residents. She opened another box. More packages. Officer Ramirez stepped forward and started taking photos with her phone. Harold turned to Stephanie. Did you put these here? He asked. Stephanie shook her head quickly. I was investigating, she said. I found these in the mailbox cluster, and I was securing them until I could identify the owners. Paula picked up a receipt and return slip held up with everything blurred from one of the bags. This is from a clothing store downtown, she said. The return slip is dated last week. She handed it to Officer Ramirez. This is not securing evidence, Officer Ramirez said. This is hoarding stolen property. Harold looked at Stephanie. You are suspended from all HOA activities effective immediately, he said. The board will hold a formal hearing to determine your status. Stephanie turned toward me, her face twisted with rage. This is your fault, she shouted. You planted this. You set me up. I stayed calm. I was in St. Cloud when the locker was damaged, I said. I have never accessed this closet. And I have never stolen anything. Officer Ramirez stepped between us. Ma'am, I need you to step outside, she said. Stephanie walked out of the closet, her hands shaking, and Officer Ramirez followed her. The rest of us stood in silence, staring at the shelves. Paula pulled out her phone and started making calls. Within an hour, 2 more deputies arrived and began cataloging the contents of the closet. I gave a full statement to Officer Ramirez, including the timeline of Stephanie's accusations, the fake sign-in logs, the tow truck incident, and the video that did not match the camera locations. Officer Ramirez wrote everything down and gave me an incident report number. This will be investigated, she said. If charges are filed, you will be notified. The next morning, I received an email from Paula. The HOA board had held an emergency vote overnight and decided to freeze all enforcement actions until a neutral third-party review was completed. Stephanie was required to communicate only in writing going forward, and she was barred from filing any new complaints without board pre-approval. The email also included a refund notice for the $250 Stephanie had billed me, plus a formal apology from the board. I forwarded the email to Linda. She replied with a single word, finally. I spent the rest of the week answering questions from the police, providing records, and helping identify the owners of the stolen packages. It turned out that the item was never truly missing. It was moved to create panic. Stephanie had been taking packages from the mailbox cluster and storing them in the closet, then filing theft complaints against random residents to create chaos and justify her investigations. The stolen items included not just packages, but also petty cash from the clubhouse office, cleaning supplies, and even a tool pouch left inside a car trunk that had been reported stolen weeks earlier. The dashcam angle from a neighbor's car became the center of the fight when the footage showed Stephanie walking through the parking lot with the tool pouch late one night. 3 weeks later, I received a call from Officer Ramirez. Stephanie Kessler has been charged with theft and fraud, she said. The DA is moving forward with prosecution. I felt a weight lift off my chest. What happens now? I asked. She will likely take a plea deal, Officer Ramirez said. But even if she does, the civil charges will follow. The HOA is already working with an attorney to recover damages. The HOA scheduled a formal meeting to address the fallout. I attended, along with about 30 other residents, many of whom had been victims of Stephanie's thefts. Harold opened the meeting by apologizing on behalf of the board. "We failed to act when we should have," he said. "We allowed this to continue because we did not want to believe one of our own board members was capable of this. Moving forward, we are implementing new oversight policies and requiring all enforcement actions to go through a neutral review process." During the meeting, a resident who admitted they were pressured to sign a complaint stood up and spoke. "Stephanie told me that if I did not sign a statement saying I saw suspicious activity, she would file a noise complaint against me," she said. "I was scared, so I signed. But I never actually saw anything." Several other residents nodded. Harold made notes and promised to investigate every complaint Stephanie had filed in the last 2 years. At the end of the meeting, Paula stood up and called me to the front of the room. "On behalf of the board and the management office, I want to thank you for your persistence," she said. "You did what we should have done months ago." She handed me a written correction while Stephanie, was not present, but the moment still felt like a victory. The letter formally cleared my name, rescinded all fees and penalties, and reinstated my home business license without conditions. The fallout continued for months. Stephanie was banned from the property, and her name was removed from all HOA committees. The board hired a forensic accountant to review the HOA finances, and they discovered that Stephanie had been skimming petty cash for over a year, using fake receipts and vendor invoices to cover her tracks. The total losses were estimated at over $5,000. A vendor refusing to cooperate without proper authorization became a key part of the recovery process when the tow company Stephanie had used refused to provide records without a subpoena, which forced the board to involve their attorney. The funny karma moment came a few weeks later. Stephanie tried to flex authority one last time by showing up at the management office and demanding to inspect records under her old board title. Paula calmly pulled up the HOA policy on her computer and read it aloud. "Board members who are under criminal investigation are not authorized to access HOA records or facilities. The policy says she cannot." Stephanie left without another word. The board also discovered that Stephanie had been using her position to weaponize selective enforcement against renters and new residents, trying to drive up vacancies so her friends could buy units at lower prices. The rental cap was quietly removed from the bylaws in the next annual meeting, and several new families moved in without issue. As for me, I kept my head down and focused on my work. The home business license stayed active, and I even picked up a few new clients from other Sunset Ridge residents who appreciated how I handled the situation. Linda stayed on as the management office receptionist, and we developed a quiet friendship built on mutual exhaustion and dark humor about HOA politics. Greg retired a few months later, and Paula took over as property manager. She ran a tight ship, and the chaos dropped to near zero. The stolen packages were returned to their owners, and the police recovered most of the missing cash and supplies. Stephanie's trial was scheduled for the following spring, but she accepted a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. The board voted to pursue a civil lawsuit for the financial damages, and the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. I ran into one of the board members, Harold, at the mailbox cluster a few months later. He looked older, more tired. "I just want to say again, I am sorry we did not act sooner," he said. "You should not have had to go through that." I shrugged. "At least it is over," I said. Harold nodded. "We learned a hard lesson," he said. "Power without accountability is just tyranny in miniature." I thought about that for a long time after he walked away. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The package lockers were repaired, the clubhouse storage closet was cleared out and locked with a new system that required 2 keys held by separate board members, and the security cameras were upgraded to cover all blind spots. Stephanie's name became a cautionary tale, whispered in hallways and at community events. "Do not pull a Stephanie," people would say when someone suggested bending the rules. I stayed at Sunset Ridge for another 2 years before buying a house in a neighborhood with no HOA. The day I moved out, Linda gave me a card signed by the entire management office staff. It said, "Thanks for keeping us honest." I put it in a box with all the other paperwork from the case: the incident reports, the refund notices, the letters of apology, and the final settlement agreement. I do not look at it often, but I keep it as a reminder that sometimes standing your ground is the only way to stop the chaos. I hope your neighborhood stays drama-free.